I played the game.
Oh, Jewel, they get every note right.
I've heard some people say that. I just haven't got a chance to see it. Is all.
You're going to want to do a thing on that. I'm telling you, it's good. Walton Goggins is fantastic
My
as this
favorite, my
cowboy.
one of my favorite. We're recording, by the way. One of my favorite Fallout games, even though it wasn't the game it was at launch, was New Vegas.
No, Vegas is terrific.
Yeah, they fixed it really well. Because when it first came out, it was not great, but there was a lot of mods, so
Uh-huh.
it was a game that needed modded too.
The most
Uh,
diabolical man I know is a guy named Johannes McCray, who is one of the finest human beings who ever breathed, and a potential Bond villain in training. Maybe not even in training. Johannes was a master at that game and had a character who just waltzed right through it, and it was like watching Bach write music.
yeah,
It was just perfection.
yeah. Have I'm trying to think. Have you ever? How many of the Fallout games have you played, Danny?
I mean, I have been in and around Fallout New Vegas and Fallout 3.
Yeah,
I have Fallout 4. I've started Fallout 76.
yeah. I hope like for the next when if they do another Fallout game, which I'm sure they will. Um, it doesn't have to be set on Earth. Set it somewhere else. Why not go bold, go space? But we'll see. We'll see what they do. Uh, I'm resident of Colorado for YouTube, Joel Saints. That's my buddy Patrick McCray. We're here to talk the anniversary of Barnabas Collins because on this day in 1967, actor Jonathan Fred, who's Canadian, played vampire Barnabas Collins. Willie Loomis, John Carlin's character, let him out of the coffin. Really, episode 211 and 212 are great. 211 is obviously the debut of Barnabas, but 212 is just as important as well because it gives you some character depth
So
with Barnabas.
211 is the knock on the door and he comes in,
Yep,
right?
yep,
And then 212 is where he has his sit down with Elizabeth.
yep. And
Okay.
and here's my question to you, because I love Sarah Johnson when she opens the door, and I love Clarice Blackburn's face. What did you
It's
think of that?
great. She's seen a ghost.
Yep.
And really, I think because I doubt Sarah's seen the ghosts or anything. I mean,
No.
she's seen lots of stuff with this, but and it's like the pink elephants are in the way of the ghost. But I don't know why I like to think of Sarah Johnson as this inveterate alkie, but I really do. It's just I don't know. Alcoholism's not funny, but on her it's sort of amusing. Anyway, the point is, um one world has ended and another world's began. She has seen the rest of Dark Shadows screaming at her. She sees all the way to 1995.
Yeah.
In that just spiritually, in that moment, there is a continuum between her and 1995, and that's when she talks about the golden days at Collinwood ending. Yeah, she's talking about right before the knock on that door. That's the time she's really talking about.
Yeah, it's funny. I sent a couple people episode 211 before I came on here on Facebook. And I'm
Yeah.
still watch it, and I'm going to show my doctor tomorrow episode 211 a bit.
What
So,
does he think you're hallucinating this television
well,
show, and will it prove that you're not insane? What are you showing your
no,
doc?
no, no, no. I love showing people Dark Shadows because I'm just a nutcase. Uh, but
You mean the dark shadows of your soul?
yeah, yeah,
No,
yeah,
you mean
yeah,
the
yeah, yeah, yeah. There you go. I
I'll show you
really,
dark shadows.
yes, I just love showing Dark Shadows to people. So when I show my foot doctor tomorrow, uh, an episode of Dark Shadow, like, hey, check this out,
That's good. Spread
you
the
know,
word.
and there's
You
nothing
need to
wrong.
make You know what you need to make? You need to make chick comics for Dark Shadows. Those little yellow Bible comics that would
Yeah,
appear, with all the
yeah.
make that, but talking about the dangers of not watching Dark Shadows and so on. What can happen to you? That's really a funny idea.
How important, obviously, is John Carlin's Willie Loomis ultimately? You think?
I guess not. In this episode, he doesn't appear in this episode, does he?
Well, he doesn't. He appears at the very beginning, I believe, where
Well, the
he
tag at the end of
the,
the last episode.
yeah the tag at the end of the last episode, but his character was primarily brought in, although played by a different actor, to get this reveal moment here for this specific moment. So I mean,
Really, he was not always just going to be a catalyst for Jason McGuire.
yeah.
I don't know. I mean, it's when you say he was brought on, for it to be Barnabas's Renfield. Was that why he was brought on, or was it just a convenient
Well, it's weird because
coincidence?
when Jason shows up, they don't really mention like the darkest family secret ever. But when Willie shows up, they say about one of these men will unleash the darkest family secret ever, which is Barnabas. Um, Now we're going to come to learn about a lot of other secrets later on once Barnabas is
And
released.
what's in Roger's sock drawer?
Right, right. But I really love how they build up this character of Willie Loomis. I mean, look, without Jason McGuire, Willie's probably not going to be in Collinsport, that's for sure.
Yeah.
But now that he's here, he at first he comes into the house because even though Jason doesn't really want him in the house, and then he gets thrown out by Elizabeth for harassing Carolyn and Vicky. He gets into a fight with Burke, and all the meanwhile he researches the Collins family history book. I love Clarice Blackburn's line, um, not in this episode, but in the episode after this, where he she says that Willie was asking about the family, and he's like Jason McGuire's like your family. She goes, no, you wouldn't get two words out of me out of my family. This family, the Collins family.
Something just occurred to me, and it's this, Mr. Bund. Um, the thing that occurred to me is that if you trace it back, when all of the weirdness at Collinwood really starts, is when Liz tries to kill Paul.
Yeah,
Because if Liz had not tried to kill Paul, there would be no reason for Jason McGuire to come back. Jason McGuire doesn't come back. There's no Willie Loomis who's
yeah,
psychically weak enough to hear the pulse. Because how long has Barnabas been sending, just that occasional sonar pulse?
yeah,
Because he's got to be doing it at random at this point, just when he manages to marshal the energy.
yeah.
Pong, and it goes out, and then he's in torpor again for another decade, and pong, and Willie is there.
Yeah.
It didn't get Matthew Morgan. It didn't get, so almost I have to ask, what was it about Willie Loomis that made him susceptible to that?
I think ultimately greed initially, because you and I have talked about this. The character who changes the most, I love Jonathan Fritz Barnabas, is Willie Loomis.
Sure. Starts
Um,
wearing that tie. He's got Roxanne.
yeah, he he starts he starts off as this thief who in every way is an apprentice to a con man named Jason McGuire. And then when he opens, he's standing there, and it doesn't feel like he's standing there long in front of Barnabas's portrait. And I love the tribute to Poe's Telltale Heart, because that's what you hear. You hear a heartbeat.
Yeah.
Boom,
Well,
boom,
you see
boom.
the eyes glow, don't they?
Yep, they're the episode. The I think it's very briefly. You see the eyeballs sort of bulge, like glow, if you will, and it's very, very good. The effects team was very great at it. I love how they did that too. And but there's moments when, and they're smart about this too, because I think there's somebody else who comes into a room at another point in time, and you don't see the eyeballs glow, and the heartbeat has stopped. Um,
Well, there's in an earlier episode, Roger drops his keys and he doesn't want to go turn the candelabra bulbs on. And so he actually asked Barnabas if he'll make his eyes glow again. And he picks up the painting and kind of scans around on the floor. And it's enough light. He finds his keys and hangs it back up and thanks him.
I love the promo Mrs. Johnson cuts. She says about no one hangs up a thing around here before the knock comes at the door. Uh,
Yeah.
and then the knock comes, and then I love how they shoot this. They shoot this from over the shoulder of Jonathan. You don't see his face, but like I said, Clarice is selling. And when he comes in, and then, oh, and Madam, you may tell her it's Barnabas call. it's, it's so good because he hasn't met Joan Bennett's Elizabeth yet. He's about to, in the next episode.
I
But
did I did a breakdown of this with the daybook. I think at first it was just an article that wasn't going to be the daybook or something like that. But Wallace asked me to do a breakdown, it's sort of a directorial cinematic breakdown. It's in the first daybook, although the pictures aren't because it's legal stuff.
yeah,
Uh, on the in the article they work. It is the internet. It's the Wild West. Uh, but you've really got to look at it in terms of what's called the rule of thirds. You got to put this tic-tac-toe grid over it, and on the bottom of the grid, over, well, I can't tell which is going to be the left and the right for viewers, but sort of over here where you start reading over in the left, and it goes down, and then your eye naturally goes up, and then goes out like that. And so this line and this line are important, this line and this line are important, and the places where they intersect are important. And if you look at where Mrs. Johnson is, and you look at where Jonathan Fritz's head is in that, it matches up so that you really start with her. And Henry Kaplan and Leela Swift knew this. You start down here, Mrs. Johnson's eye line. Even though they're both in the frame, it tells you to look at it through her perspective, and even the slope of his collar right there. And
yeah.
it keeps doing that. I'll tell you a little bit, just a very brief story, which I find funny. When you were a kid, were you ever told by one of your parents to clean your room, and you kind of cleaned it, and you thought you had done well enough, and they came in and said, no, 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 there's this. So you did it again, and then they said, no, no, no. It was like 3 or 4 times until you finally got it right. You know that moment?
Yeah, yeah.
That's what it was like writing this for Wallace, because he was not going to let me be lazy. I wrote it, and I thought I was. And if you look at the piece, there's a place where it almost ends. Well, it did. And Wallace said, no, I think you can say more. It's like, okay. So I said more. And Wallace said, no, I think you can say more. And he was a genius with that, and still is, because he knew exactly when I was being lazy and when to push me. And it ended up being, I think, one of the most read articles on the site.
Yeah. That's awesome. That's
Yeah, but it was that. It was, I thought I'd cleaned my room, Wallace. No, you hadn't.
that is awesome. So in this, by the end of episode 211, we get the arrival of Barnabas Collins. 212 is he's interacting with Elizabeth. He's interacting with Victoria Winters. Um, he we get a bit of a backdrop here too. He interacts with David as well, and I love this here because Elizabeth does talk about the Collins family history book. She goes, "Well, I always, to my understanding, Barnabas died off in England." And I love what Jonathan Fritz's character says. Barnabas says, he says, but the family history book never spoke of his marriage. And considering communication in those days, which makes sense, if you're going to tell a lie, tell a clever lie. Um, what did you think of that, Patrick? It was so good.
It's perfect. And it's the sort of thing that he doesn't even have to be hip to the 20th century
Yeah.
to say, is that's the mail. I mean, who gets those things? It's like attachments on emails. That
Yeah.
was an attachment on the email. I don't read it. Well, you need to start. That's what you get for missing staff meetings. You're right.
Well, it's smart too because it's what makes Dark Shadows so fun. That Dark Shadows was set at its time period during the 60s, because there's no email, there's no cell phones, and who's to say that stuff would work at Collinwood anyway?
Well, it hadn't been invented yet for even the writers.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, there are no telegrams.
Right. There are no telegrams. You're right. So they have to rely on Barnabas's word, which I love, that okay, this what he's saying makes sense. It's a lie, but it's a clever lie.
It's a good line.
And I she goes, "Well, did you come to America to find a bride?" That wasn't my initial visit, but I haven't ruled that out, So we're gonna get, the kidnapping of Maggie Evans later, which is a lot of
It's
fun.
like, did you come here to find a bride? I don't know. How much rope do you have? I hear you have some extra room in the basement that's pretty quiet.
Which I do. Did you see where Catherine Lee Scott on Facebook was watching the episodes where her character was
Yeah.
speaking?
She
Yeah,
reposted a daybook about the McGuire wedding.
cool.
Yeah.
Awesome. Which I really love that. He mentions about the bride and a bride in this episode. Well, I haven't rolled that out, so which is cool. And as he put it, he preferred more independent quarters. So obviously, he doesn't want anyone to find out he's a vampire, which makes sense. And we still haven't. What I love about this episode too is we still have not seen Willie Loomis yet. We're not going to see him in this episode either in 211 or really 212. But it's a good build up to when Willie Loomis will reappear as well. And he does meet Victoria Winters. My favorite scene, obviously, is when he meets David at the old house, and David tells him about Josette's portrait, and you get the line of the century about how he talks to Josette's portrait. I was at Collins. Where were you when I was turned to something my own father loved? What did you think of all that?
That speech.
Yeah,
You know, if you look at vampires up to that point, for one thing, there really hadn't been that many.
yeah,
And the vampire was always the master of the game.
yeah,
The vampire was always one step ahead of everything. The vampire had everything humans had and more. Uh, and this was one of the first cases of look at modern TV. All modern TV, it's all based on mystery. Some stupid cliffhanger to force you to watch the whole damn thing all the way to the end.
yeah,
And sometimes that's good, but I get really tired of it. And one of the things I love about Dark Shadows I never thought about before is that with Barnabas and that speech and some of the speeches that follow, they just put the cards right out there to the degree that they can without going back to 1795. They just say, okay, he's a vampire. Well, now we're going to tell you he's a guy full of regret and he did not ask to be this. Even though those writers were not reading Marvel comics, the very Marvel comic moments in the right sense of the sense of guilt, the sense of loss, the sense of, yes, I have all these powers, but the price I had to pay
yeah.
was, human disillusionment. It's fantastic.
I think the writers, well before they go back to 1795, and Jonathan obviously do a great job of making you realize this guy did not ask to be this. And
Yeah.
that to me, watching Bela Lugosi, watching Christopher Lee, and look, they did a good job playing the vampires they played, no question.
But there's
Play,
almost no character. They're playing a costume and some makeup that's moving around and saying threatening things. Jonathan Frid's playing a character.
yeah, he's playing. His character has soul, where their characters are very soulless. They feel very soulless. And I'm not saying that as a knock. I'm saying that that's the type of characters they were playing with vampires because, Bela Lugosi, Dracula, obviously. And with Barnabas, he was at the first syllable, you could tell this is not Vlad the Impaler. This is not Vlad Dracula. Because when I was in when I was in elementary school, before we learned about the fictional that is Dracula, we learned about the real life Vlad the Impaler and who he really was, which is just crazy.
Yeah.
But this here, I love Fred's mannerisms and especially the way he's talking to Josette's portrait because I always got the sense of he didn't feel a man who was angry. He felt a man who was hurt and a
Mhm.
bit betrayed. And it, this helps the writers make even the more sense out of 1795 and his dad not shooting him, not killing him, because the biggest similarity him and Victoria Winters have about their time travel experience, Barnabas going forward and Vicky going back, is neither expected to be there.
That's right. That's right. Surprise. Uh, yeah. One of the things I was going to say, you said something really interesting about, the difference between Dracula's or these military figures, and Barnabas is a very wounded figure. And it's the problem with casting a guy like Ben Cross in that role and expecting a lot of the same Barnabas things. There is something about Jonathan Frid, as imposing as he is, there is a real vulnerability. There's
Yeah.
a real sense of vulnerability. And Ben Cross is just James Bond.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, but he just has the world by the ass and he knows it. And that's just something that is intrinsic to Ben Cross, I guess, himself in the best sense. God
Yeah.
bless him. That he really is. He's a very. He's a guy who would not let those things happen. And I can't hear that monologue coming out of Ben Cross's mouth and having the same effect that it did when it came from Jonathan. When it came from Jonathan Frid, Frid was somehow able to be this very dark, brooding, leading man and really a 1970s type protagonist, full of weaknesses and worries and things like that, but we still back him up.
I was watching an interview with Bill Hader, the guy you said about playing.
Bill Hader,
Yeah, I'm
yeah,
sorry, Bill Hader. I see why you say about him playing Barnabas now.
he'd be great. Bill
Yeah,
Hader is just the Barnabas for me.
I
Yeah,
do. Something I said on one of the Facebook groups. I think it was the Drawing Room that the Collinsport Historical Society runs. That
the zone of
somebody,
safety, the refuge.
absolutely. Somebody asked, "Who do you prefer, Jonathan Frid, Ben Cross, or Johnny Depp?" I said, "I prefer Jonathan Frid's Barnabas, but Ben Cross did a really good job playing a different type of Barnabas."
He was playing another character named Barnabas
Barnabas
Collins,
Collins, yeah,
and it wasn't the same, but that's okay because I love what he did, and I am happy to watch that show.
yeah. He,
Yeah, it's an interesting thing. Well, it's like, oh, who is the best James Bond?
yeah,
And it's like I don't know all of them. It depends on the mood I'm in. It depends on what you want from the character in that moment.
he does. I do. I've always joked at times when I will go back and watch the revival, is that it does feel like he's auditioning for Bond. It really
For
does.
what?
It feels like when he,
Auditioning for Bond? Yeah.
yeah, yeah, it really does. And here's the thing: could he have been? Sure.
I think he was considered.
Yeah.
I think he was one of the actors considered for Bond.
Yeah, I mean him, because I think if memory serves me, they were leaning toward Pierce Brosnan, but yeah, he was in the running. Yeah.
The guy from that era that I really liked for Bond was an actor named Simon McCorkindale.
Who is it?
Simon McCorkindale was Manimal.
Oh,
And he also played a shark hunting expert or something like that in Jaws 3D. But he was a fine English actor. I know he appeared in something with Catherine, and he was just a good, smooth English actor. He had sort of a David McCallum quality, a little bit, Man from Uncle. And he was handsome, but in a slightly unusual kind of Meryl Streepy way, almost like a male Meryl Streep. And There was just a sense of lightness and irony that he had. He would not have been he would have much closer to Pierce Brosnan than Daniel Craig.
Mm.
But if they had kept going in the Roger Moore direction, which I was fine with, McCorkindale would have been an ideal successor to the Roger Moore James Bond.
I wouldn't have been upset if they would have brought Timothy Dalton back for Goldeneye.
Oh, I would have been delighted.
Yeah.
But Pierce thought he was going to get Living Daylights. The
Yeah.
ink was all but dry, and I think maybe he was about to go on stage and have it be announced. And NBC, the word had gotten out that he was going to do it, and so Remington Steele had already been canceled, and the reruns ratings, or like the end of the season ratings, really shot through the roof because everybody wanted to see who the new James Bond was. So NBC reversed its mind, changed its mind at the last minute.
Yeah.
And this was a guy, Pierce Brosnan was a widower with a kid, and he had to go tell his kid it wasn't going to happen. Pierce Brosnan told this story about being on an airplane with his son or his daughter, and they were so young they knew who James Bond was. They didn't know the politics behind what had happened, and I think Living Daylights started on the in-flight movie, and the kid said, "Hey, Daddy, is this one of yours?" And that's when Pierce had to try and break it to him that he wasn't going to be James Bond. So Pierce Brosnan paid his dues.
Yeah.
No one that handsome has any right being that human, down to earth, and funny.
I think I really enjoyed him in a movie called November Man. Have you ever seen it?
No, I've heard it's very good.
Yeah, it is really good, and I thought he did a really good job as Dr. Fate, even though the Black Adam movie wasn't great.
Yeah.
I thought
Well,
he did.
there's no such thing as a bad Pierce Brosnan performance.
No, there's not.
Who else can you say? Not many people. But at no point does Pierce Brosnan ruin a movie. At no point do you go, "Oh Christ, it's a Pierce Brosnan scene." I mean, this is a guy who resolutely cannot sing, and he single-handedly rescues Mamma Mia.
Yeah.
That's a movie. Maybe because he can't sing, he's like a human's broken into this film, and it's Operation Invade ABBA, and he's great. His bad singing is so human and genuine that you just feel represented.
Yeah. I'm trying to think of a good question to ask you. Is there a character, because Barnabas had so many interactions with so many characters, is there a character you wish Jonathan Fred's character would have got to do more scenes with?
Well, yeah, I certainly the uh the Mitch Ryan Burke Devlin,
Yeah.
because when he'd go on and on ranting and raving about Devlin, I think actually he wouldn't have ranted and raved so much if it had been the Mitch Ryan Devlin, because he at least could have respected him.
Yeah.
But it's like, Anthony George, I'm being denied because of Anthony George. That Burke Devlin with his little windbreaker and turtleneck. It's like, seriously? That's why Ben Cross wears the turtleneck all the time. It's like, you got me the last time. You picked a guy with the turtleneck over me. You're not gonna get me this time, Vicky. I'm wearing the turtleneck, and now you'll fall in love with me. This show isn't even gonna have Burke Devlin. Ha ha ha! It's in my contract.
No, it's not. That's what's crazy about the revival too. No Burke Devlin whatsoever.
It's funny. It's in Barnabas's contract. He put up with it once. He's not gonna do it again.
I know he had interactions with this character, but I really enjoyed him and Dr. Eric Lane's interactions. I wish,
Oh, yeah, they're hilarious. But any Eric Lang interaction is
yeah,
gonna be funny.
yep, it really is. I
Addison Powell.
I
I
do,
love that guy. I just could watch him forever. He is so bloody funny.
and he's so on too with his mad scientist portrayal.
I, this is a man who invests completely. He goes for it. I mean, just imagine a two-man show with Addison Powell and Keith Prentice.
Oh my God, yeah,
There,
yeah,
there wouldn't be a stick of furniture left standing in that theater. There'd be the walls would blow away.
I really would. Somebody asked once, who's your best actor who played him in a sentence? I said Addison Powell.
Yeah, yeah, that's a great answer. I mean, it's like I don't want subtlety. I don't want truth.
Yeah,
Real life is boring. That's why we have art. I want acting. If I'm paying for acting, God damn it, I want to see it.
yeah,
I want to see the acting. I want to know acting's happening. I don't want acting to sneak up on me.
yeah. How there are so many characters who come into Barnabas's life. Obviously, Dr. Julie Hoffman, Grayson Hall's character. She's going to be a big major player. Obviously, how important was it that they cast Angelique Wright, Patrick?
Oh, we've talked about this, or I've written about it. I mean,
I know.
I think it was the most important casting decision on the show ever, because this is your keystone. This explains Barnabas.
Yeah,
And once you see her and you go, oh, wait, uh, oh, okay, yeah. You have to be able to do that math from the moment she enters. And of course, she's blessed with this extraordinary face. It's
yeah,
amazing eyes and cheekbones. I mean, it's like Charles Delaware Tate himself created her, because no act of human biology could create someone that extraordinary looking. And and Laura Parker was a woman who was she was beyond beautiful. It just was something else. It was there's this theory you're saying there are only like 7 or 8 types of faces in the world. And sometimes when you see a celebrity that really strikes you, you have seen a new face. And one of the things Raisin Hall said is, she said, Dan, I know your secret. You cast people with enormous faces and fantastic voices. And that was true.
yeah,
And, look at Alexandra Mulkey. I've seen beautiful women, but not quite like that.
yeah.
Catherine Lee Scott. I've seen beautiful women, but not quite like that. It's just these amazing looking people who then can act. Then they open up their mouths and you hang on every word. And Jonathan Frid, again, this extraordinary face, just some combination of features that is inherently exotic, and you want to solve it because you don't recognize that guy. You don't know that guy. So casting Laura Parker, wow, because it's got to explain Barnabas and why he winds up in them. Why would you do this? Because Catherine Lee Scott as Josette's already been established.
Yeah.
So why would you do this? Okay, yeah, I get it. I, and she has to be the antithesis of the other women on the show without making them look unattractive. But
Yeah,
somehow she has to be the opposite, and she is.
yeah. And Laura Parker and the writers do a really great job because here's a character, unlike the other characters we've gotten, there was no build to her character, none. I mean, not really.
That stuns me, because in my memory, when I think back, it feels like there should have been, and I even made an assertion about that. And if there's one thing people love doing, it's correcting me in the daybook. And someone got real pointy with me about it. "Ah, she had never appeared before," and it's like, well, they were right. She
Yeah,
had not been mentioned before, but the writing of Angelique is so wonderful, and the performance of Laura Parker has just such a sense of immediate permanence that my mind retroactively put in constant Angelique references.
yeah. But I think that's the thing too. Me, you, Christine, Kara, Gordon, or no, Gordon wasn't there for that. We did episode 368, 369, where Angelique makes her debut. They
Hmm.
do a really good job of giving her the floor to build to make her character, and she does.
It doesn't take her long.
No, it does not. More writers need to watch Dark Shadows and look at what they really did.
Yeah, that's true. And you can bring back Shakespeare from the grave, but if he's not writing for Laura Parker, I'm sorry. I mean, I think that's why casting Angelique is so important, and why, God bless her, both Lysette Anthony and Ava Green, very beautiful women.
Yeah.
But I feel like they look like beautiful women I have seen before other places. Unlike, let's say, Gina Davis,
Yeah.
where, the first time you see Gina Davis, you think, well, I've never seen anybody look like that before. Okay. And that's a trick of biology, and thank goodness they went into cinematic storytelling.
Favorite Gina Davis movie?
Mine,
Yeah.
The Fly.
Nice. Nice.
The Fly's a great movie.
Mine's The Long Kiss Goodnight. Really good movie.
It's a good movie. Yeah. Yeah, very good movie.
The Fly is a great remake, though. Really different, her and Jeff Goldblum really did a great job.
There's such great chemistry. And Earth Girls Are Easy. I forgot about that. That may be my favorite Gina Davis movie. She and Julie Brown really own that film.
Yeah, great actress. Really, really underrated for her time. Just like Laura Parker, very underrated.
Yeah.
Jonathan's character of Barnabas is so good. I'm trying to think of one final question before we get here's one for you. With all his adventures, we've seen him time travel, we've seen him parallel time. Which do you prefer, Barnabas going back in time or Barnabas going into another dimension of time?
Well, the storylines in 1840 and 1897 are both so good.
Yeah.
That you could have a rabbit in the part, and I would prefer that because the stories are so good.
Yeah.
So I sort of lean that way. And Jonathan Fridge is one of these guys like Charlton Heston, where they're just kind of born to wear period clothing. He looks right in those clothes.
Yeah. I think, too, one of my favorite ones was when he went back to 1840. It felt very different, like from supposed to 1897. And I know that's the Judah Zachary arc and stuff, but I really enjoyed how they had the way the Dark Shadows they did the costumes, designs, and stuff. They looked so fabulous.
Mm-hmm.
Just don't get me wrong, 1897 is fun to watch for sure.
But the stakes are even higher in 1840.
Yeah,
and Barnabas has really suffered to get there.
Though he doesn't play Barnabas, he plays Bramwell. I love 1841 too. Even the clothes designs there were really, really good. So
Mary McKinley, the fine costume designer, they finally were able to make their own costumes rather than rent them.
Yeah, and they look great too. That's the thing.
Or wait, no, that was 18. I think she just did 1841 parallel time.
Okay.
I think that was it. But man, they look terrific.
Yeah, they did, and I really love how just by having Nancy Barrett's character be like the thinnest character, they make her look younger than everybody else. It's like, my God, she looks stunning.
Really
is there anything you want to add before we go?
No, this was a particularly fun geek out. I really enjoyed this, and I figured some new stuff out about the show, so that's even better.
Is there anything you want to do tomorrow night? Anything at all? I'll message.
Yeah, Friday night's usually a feature, isn't it?
Yeah, we usually do a feature.
I don't know. Let's. Oh, we should talk about Flash Gordon.
Ooh.
Gordon's alive.
That is a good one.
Let's talk about Flash Gordon.
All right, I'll message Gordon, and tomorrow.
Flash Gordon, yeah.
Yeah, tomorrow night at 10:30, Flash Gordon with me, Patrick.
I can't wait. That'll get me through the day. I'm looking forward to it.
Link to the Dark Shadows Daybook of Now will be in the description box. Link to the Collinsport Historical Society will be in the description box. And yes, Wallace, Patrick has cleaned his room. Fuck. a
Have a
good night,
great
buddy.
night, Jewel. Take
Bye.
care.